London, home of the most depressing weather in the world, a completely unplayable cost of living, and the 2025 European International Championships. With over 3,350 competitors in the Masters division of TCG alone, this was going to be the biggest tournament that's ever been held in the West. So there is absolutely no chance that I'm missing an opportunity to win it. When I hopped on the plane for that lengthy 24-hour flight, I only bought 2 fully built decks with me. I didn't want any distractions, temptations, or opportunities for a last-minute switch. I wanted to lock in on something that I genuinely practice and would give me a serious shot at going all the way. My first option was Dragapult Dusknoir, in my opinion the straight-up best deck in the meta. Phantom Dive is arguably the most powerful attack in the game right now, and the deck makes great use of the broken new card Badoo. And it also functions really well while under item lock thanks to cards like Lance and the Drakloak Draw Engine. On the other hand, I'm not usually one to play the most popular deck in the room, and I absolutely love some off-meta spice. So I was genuinely considering playing this funny Badoo pile as a cheeky anti-meta call. This deck was legitimately so fun to play, and I genuinely believed that it could be solid into the majority of the expected meta. Plus, at the very least, it would come with the element of surprise and 100% catch anyone who isn't an avid Tim Danklin fan off guard. These are actually both decks that I recently made videos on, because I always want to keep it real with you on what I've been playing and what I think is well positioned in the meta. However, with Miraidon winning the last 2 regionals, there was a huge target on its back, which meant Klefki stocks were absolutely through the roof. And not just in Gardevoir decks, this obnoxious set of keys was even starting to pop up in some other decks like Dragapult and Lugia. Unfortunately, my beloved Badoo deck is caught in the crossfire, and this single card is capable of completely shutting it down. No Oranguru, Squawkabilly, or Lumineon for setting up, and no access to free retreat with Latias or Poison from Brute Bonnet. Even if they don't manage to get out in the early game, a late game Iono paired with Klefki and Countercatcher was often enough to let any deck catch right back up and completely undo any advantage that I may have gained in the early game. I spent almost my entire flight to London thinking about this one problematic tech card, and I just couldn't come to a solution that didn't completely compromise the heart of the deck. So once I got off the plane, I knew that I'd have to say goodbye to my funny little creation and spend the remainder of the week locked in on Dragapult. Although I'd been putting reps into the archetype for weeks now, Brent Tonnisson's list from the most recent regionals over in Mexico was actually a fair bit different to what I've been playing, and it was pretty inspiring. I was a big fan of his decision to include 3 Duskulls, and I could see the value in replacing Technical Machine Evolution with a Rotom V. After a couple days of testing that specific 60, it was feeling good, and I was just about ready to send it. In the end, my only change was to cut an Ultra Ball in order to make room for a 3rd Iono, since I constantly felt like I was missing a bit of hand disruption whenever I needed it. I was also flip-flopping on playing a 1-2 or 2-1 split of Dusclops and Dusknoir right up until the very last hour before deck submission. In the end, I decided to stick with 1 Dusclops and 2 Dusknoir, since that's just what I was most comfortable on. So let's quickly run through what I ended up on, and then we'll jump into what I can only describe as an interesting tournament. Our main Pokemon line has 4 Dreepy, 4 Drakloak for a draw engine, and 3 Dragapult for our attackers. We've also got 3 Duskull, 1 Dusclops, and 2 Dusknoir to fix damage and potentially wipe our opponent's board, 1 Badoo because the card is absolutely goated, 1 Radiant Alakazam for damage manipulation, 1 Lumineon V to transform an Ultra Ball into a full setup, 1 Pheasantipity EX because it's just the best way to draw cards, 1 Rotom V to give us a nice option when going first, 4 Arven for easy consistency, 3 Iono for some more early consistency as well as a bit of hand disruption in the late game, 2 Lance since it's just an incredible way to find Pokemon while item locked, 1 Professor Turo's Scenario in case anything gets trapped in the active, and you can reuse Alakazam with it, 1 Boss's Orders for some unconditional gusting. Our Pokemon search consists of 4 Buddy Buddy Poffins, 3 Ultra Balls, and 2 Nest Balls, 2 Rare Candy, this is mainly for Dusknoir, but sometimes you can use it to get aggressive with Dragapult, 2 Night Stretcher to recycle resources, 2 Countercatcher, we almost always want to be behind in prizes, and item-based gusting is insane, 1 Lost Vacuum, which can help out in a few different matchups, 1 Earthen Vessel as a way to search out energy, 1 Temple of Sinnoh to flip the Lugia matchup into our favor, 1 Sparkling Crystal to make Dragapult's attacks way easier to pull off, 1 Forest Sealstone to spawn in any card we want with the help of a V Pokemon, 1 Rescue Board to help us move Pokemon out of the active, 3 Fire Energy and 3 Psychic Energy, and of course, absolutely no Luminous Energy. That card is a joke. With my whole deck sleeved up in some crisp new Dragon Shields, I was ready for the tournament. But first, a quick stop at the Pokemon Center where I did some very important shopping and met a few fans along the way. Shout out to everyone who came up for a photo over the weekend. I always appreciate meeting anyone who enjoys what I do. Now, with the most vital part of my weekend out of the way, it was time to kick off the actual tournament, and it all starts with round 1. This is always an interesting one because you generally set up the game well before you actually get to start. This means that you can have something something like 20 minutes where you already know what your opening hand is. Sometimes this is great and you're at complete peace knowing that your opponent barely stands a chance, or alternatively, you could be dreading an immediate loss, knowing that everything is riding on that single card on top of your deck. In my case, it was the latter. See, I lost the coin flip and had to go first, opened Radiant Alakazam in the active, which is just about the worst starter Pokemon thanks to its hefty 2 retreat cost, and this was the rest of my opening hand. Earthen Vessel, Psychic Energy, Dracloak, Countercatcher, and 2 Arven. So you can imagine that I was absolutely sweating about what my top deck was going to be for the entire opening ceremony. My opponent flips over a Badoo, so I can't even rely on turn 2 Arven to set up. This top deck needs to be absolutely massive, otherwise I am completely cooked. And it was a Fire Energy, perfect. All I can do is attach to Radiant Alakazam and pass. Obviously they item lock me, but I'm able to attach to Alakazam again and take the first KO with Mind Ruler. And then they use Night Stretch to get back Badoo, completely locking me out of the game for another turn. Even though I do take a second KO, at this point they're set up and the game is functionally over. Not the best way to start the tournament, but it's fine, I can still easily win the set. Game 2 surely has to be better, especially since I'll be going second. Opening up the opportunity to use supporters on my first turn makes it almost impossible to brick. Maybe I'll even get to utilize my own turn 1 Badoo. So funny story actually, my opening for game 2 is Dreepy in the active, with a hand of Rare Candy, Night Stretcher, Fire Energy, Dusclops, and 2 Dusknoir with a completely irrelevant top deck. So yeah, that's round 1 of the tournament over, and pretty much entirely out of my control. One of the big reasons that I chose to play Dragapult was just how consistent it was at actually playing the game. As a top player, that is something that I seriously value, since if I can just get into the game with a high agency deck, I can back myself to play better than my opponent and win off of my own skill. However, as unfortunate as those back-to-back bricks were, sometimes that's just how it goes. Even at one of the biggest tournaments of all time, and with the match slip signed, there is nothing else I can do but move on. There's no way my luck stays this bad though, right? Round 2, I'm up against a Gardevoir, the second most popular deck in the room right after my beloved Dragapult. And somehow my hand isn't looking much better than those round 1 games. All I can do on my first turn going first is attach to Duskull and pass. At least I have Arven in hand for the following turn, and fortunately Gardevoir isn't a deck that is capable of donking me. Recognizing my slow start, my opponent actually attempts to further starve me of resources by Ultra Balling away their own Artisan to search out a Ralts, denying me access to the stadium so that I can't search out my own basics. However, this also limits their own setup, and a turn 2 Arven is actually enough for me to set up a relatively strong initial board state. Over on their side, they not only whiffed Technical Machine Evolution, but the lack of Artisan is starting to hurt since they only have 2 Curliers out. With a Rare Candy, I'm able to establish a Dragapult on my 3rd turn, and thanks to Dusclops, I can wipe both Curliers. From here, I just keep up the pressure and my opponent never gets to evolve into Gardevoir and use Psychic Embrace, so I win the game. In game 2, I have to go first again, but somehow my opponent mulligans 4 times. Maybe my luck is starting to change. Thanks to my massive hand, I set up a strong board of Dreepies and Duskull, as well as a Rotom V with an unused Forest Sealstone. My opponent plays down Arven and not Iono, so this enormous hand is completely safe, and when they pass it back to me, I have more than enough combo pieces to once again wipe all of their Curliers before they can evolve. The set ends in a nice quick 2-0. I'm feeling good and like I've shaken off that bad luck from earlier. If only I knew what the TCG gods had in store for me. Round 3 and I pair another Gardevoir, but they had an interesting tech card that was immediately revealed. Since they had to open with it, I found out they were playing Mawile. Tempting Trap is pretty annoying since I have a few Pokemon that I'd rather not get stuck in the active. Although it's not the end of the world since I do have Professor Turo's Scenario to remove liabilities from my board. However, I'm not even sure that it's going to matter because I lost the coin flip again, had to go first, and this was my opening hand. Duskull in the active could be worse, but my hand is 2 Dragapult, Iono, Arven, Rare Candy, Psychic Energy, and my draw for turn was Lumineon, which really isn't going to help out when I'm going first and already have supporters in hand anyway. This was the point where I realized I need to keep writing down some of these opening hands because they are absolutely ridiculous. How does this keep happening with such a consistent deck? Fortunately for me, Gardevoir isn't exactly the type of deck to run you over, so a turn 2 Arven is enough to keep me in the game, and eventually after a close back and forth, I bring it home. And in game 2, they open Mawile again. Luckily, I don't start anything relevant for them to trap, but it does disincentivize me from benching more than just one of Pheasantipity, Rotom, Badoo, Alakazam, and Lumineon. My opener is a lot better than the first game though, and I managed to win that, so I'm feeling pretty good. We eventually reach an endgame scenario where I put them down to a 2-card hand hand off of Iono, and they need to see 4 exact cards. I believe it was something like Gardevoir EX, Dark Energy, Drifloon, and Bravery Charm. So after drawing for turn and using their only Curlier to go up to a 4-card hand, would you believe that they just have it like that? Whatever, at least I got to make some actions and play some cards. Plenty of time for me to just win game 3. And then they open Mawile again for a 3rd time in a row. It's actually insane. And to make things even worse, my only option is to start with Pheasantipity EX. I'm not able to move it out of the active in my first turn, so my opponent proceeds to start using Tempting Trap every single turn. They even look me in the eyes with a smile and say, yeah, I'm pretty happy to take a tie here. Well, I'm not. I eventually break out of the lock thanks to Professor Turo's scenario and take a huge lead thanks to my opponent's suboptimal board state. And then time gets called. When the clock hits 0, it's my opponent's turn, so they'll get the rest of that turn as well as 1 more full turn after that, whereas I'll get 2 full turns. There is no way for them to win this game, but I absolutely can. Still gunning for that tie, they attach a 2nd energy to Monkey Dory and go for Mind Bend to confuse my Dragapult. Now I've got a choice. I can either flip for confusion, set up for game on my final turn, but I'll have no chance of winning if I hit Tails. Or alternatively, I could just gust up Ralts, retreat into my other Dragapult, and use Jet Headbutt for a single prize this turn, and then just about guarantee game if I can find an energy on my final turn. I just know that if I roll that dice, it's gonna come up Tails. So I take my chances of finding an energy, and there are a fair few outs. But of course, even after a bit of digging, I can't find an Ultra Ball, a Lumineon, an Arvid, Night Stretcher, or Raw Energy. So that's the game. At least one of us is happy to end with a tie. But to be honest, I should have just been grateful that I even got to play the game, because I was about to find out that things can get way worse. In round 4, I paired an Ancient Box, and I am really not a believer in this deck, so I was pretty confident that I could beat that mid pile. And my hand actually wasn't looking too bad, plus I was going second. They had a solid start, getting 2 energy onto the Baby Roaring Moon thanks to Radiant Greninja and a Dark Patch, but I've got Badoo in the active already and a Duskull on the bench. Unfortunately, no Dreepy yet, but with Iono in hand and a deck full of Ball Search, there's no way that I don't see one, right? 6 cards off of Iono and they are all absolutely useless, and since my opponent was able to establish just about everything they need during their first turn, Badoo's Itchy Pollen isn't enough to slow them down and they easily take a quick game 1. In game 2, I get to go second again, this time starting with Radiant Alakazam, definitely not what I want to see after a rough game 1. And to add insult to injury, my hand is completely unplayable. Dusknoir, Psychic Energy, Fire Energy, Professor Turo's scenario, Boss's Orders, and Dragapult. I am completely reliant on the top deck and I've just already accepted that I'll be let down once again. But then my opponent plays Pokestop and I swear my eyes genuinely lit up a bit. I am manifesting all the wonderful item cards that I could hit off of this. Maybe a couple Buddy Buddy Poffins and an Ultra Ball. That'd be incredible. My opponent ends their first turn with a solid enough setup, getting the hand attach onto Roaring Moon, which fun fact can hit Alakazam for weakness. My top deck is a Lost Vacuum. Absolutely useless. And it all comes down to the Pokestop. Arven, Dreepy, come on, I just need to see literally anything. Fire Energy. That's it. The game's over. I had to take a picture of this because it was genuinely unreal. I was losing my mind at how this just kept happening. The whole set only took 10 minutes total, and I remember staying seated at the table for another 10 in complete disbelief. 1-2-1 is the worst record that I have ever started a tournament with. And this is an internationals that I spent 24 hours on a plane to get to, where I've had almost no control in the games that I've lost. At this point, I'd already started brainstorming video ideas like my worst tournament ever, or am I the most unlucky Pokemon player in the world? Once I'd finally packed up all my cards and gotten up, there was still well over half an hour to kill, so I headed out of the venue, grabbed some lunch, and tried to calm down. The threshold for making day 2 is 19 match points. This means that you need a record of at least 6 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie. Well, I've already got the losses in the tie, so that means I can't do anything else other than win for the rest of the day if I want to stay in the tournament. So that's what I plan on doing. It's time for round 5, and I can't lose, I can't tie, I have to win. After that much needed break, I'm feeling a lot more optimistic, but that is extremely short-lived since I lose the coin flip and have to go first, opening Dreepy with a hand of Iono, Lost Vacuum, Dusclops, Dusknoir, and 2 Dracloak. And then my opponent flips over Raging Bolt, arguably the most consistent deck when it comes to getting a turn 1 attack. I top deck an Arven, so I have literally 0 playable cards in hand and just immediately pass. Out of the 10 games that I've played so far, this has happened in 7 of them. Honestly, it's a miracle that I even have a win at this point. I'm just about ready to head to the bar nice and early so that I can forget about this absolute nightmare tournament. At least I can make a funny video about how bad my luck was. I hope you're enjoying, and please subscribe so that I can feel a little bit better. My opponent lets me know that they're sorry for my awful start and rips a nest ball, saying that they're pretty sure they've got it. But after a few looks through the deck, they find out that Radiant Greninja is definitely prized, and with no other way to discard energy in their hand, they don't have a guaranteed donk. Instead, they just have to draw a few more cards, and thanks to some kind of divine intervention, they don't find the donk, and I'm able to keep playing the game. It all ends up coming down to them needing to see Raging Bolt and Professor Sada's Vitality off of an Iono to 1. And they don't. Somehow, despite everything, I win the game. Game 2 goes a lot smoother for both of us, but even though they take the first 2 prizes, I'm able to stick to the classic Dragapult line and win in just a couple Phantom Dives. Even though that terrifying start had me just about ready to quit Pokemon, I won the set and I am still in the tournament. Just 4 more wins in a row for day 2. The next opponent in the way of my path to day 2 is a Lugia player. During game 1, I had 2 opportunities to just straight up donk their only Lugia V if I could just hit heads on Mesagoza. But of course, with my luck, both the flips were tails. Luckily, I was able to just spawn camp the Archeops instead and win the first game. The second game is much of the same. I missed another crucial Mesagoza flip that would have just won me the game on the spot, but after some back and forth, I stick to the lines I prepared for the Lugia matchup and win 2-0. In round 7, I find myself paired up against a Goldengo. Definitely not one of the easier matchups for Dragapult, and although my setup is strong, they rip the absolute nuts off of an Iono to 1 after a couple of coin bonuses and win the game. My back is up against the wall and I have to win the next 2 games if I want to keep my tournament run alive. The next game is much of the same, except this time the Iono works out in my favor. They can't find the 8 energies they needed and I managed to win. In game 3, they opt to go first, but have a seriously weak start, just attaching a metal energy to Gimmighoul and passing over to me. My hand is looking incredible and I am so excited to hit them with some itchy pollen and snowball it into an easy win. And Badoo is prized. Of course it is. I've just accepted that my luck is going to be terrible for this entire tournament, but I'm going to be better and win anyway. I built up 2 Duster on my bench, and since my opponent was only able to get 1 fully evolved Goldengo into play, I'm able to get rid of it, along with their 2 Gimmighouls thanks to some Radiant Alakazam damage manipulation, completely wiping all of their attacking options off the board, winning me the game and the set. I'm now sitting at a record of 4-2-1, and with just 2 rounds left today, making it to the next phase of competition is actually starting to feel realistic. Next up is my 3rd Gardevoir of the day. I'm super comfortable in this matchup, although they do catch me off guard at the end of game 1, buying some time by gusting up my Dustoir and locking it in the active thanks to Flutterman's ability. Dustoir's 3 retreat is way too much to move, and I'm unable to use its ability like I normally would. Fortunately, I can dig through the rest of my deck and find the boss's orders that I've been saving to disable Midnight Fluttering and win the game. In the next game, I have to go first, but I get off an immediate instant charge on both turn 1 and then again on turn 2. Without my opponent playing any kind of hand disruption like Iono, I have more than enough resources to fully wipe their board of Curliers, leading to an easy 2-0. Last one for the day, and I hit a Lost Box. This one is just absolutely free for Dragapult, right? I spend the entire early game spamming Badoo, and when they eventually knock it out with Cramorant, I draw some cards off Pheasantipity's Flip the Script and just immediately get it back with Night Stretcher to continue building up my board while keeping them item locked. After they KO Badoo a second time, I pop Dusknoir and rip Iono, turning their 20-something card hand into just 3. Following this up with a Phantom Dive to wipe their remaining draw power pretty much seals the game. And in game 2, I'm able to follow the exact same line, letting my opponent build up a huge hand under item lock while I strengthen my board, and then pairing a massive attack with a devastating Iono to completely shut them down. I can't believe that I managed to pull back from the worst start in my entire Pokemon career to win 5 sets in a row, making it to day 2 of this Internationals. But the job's not done yet. I've still got 4 more rounds to play and I want to win all of them. The day finished really late. I don't think we left the venue till around 10 PM and I was absolutely fiending a good feed. But disaster struck when the local Tesco had been completely emptied out by hungry Pokemon players. No cheap meal deals for me. Instead, I'd be forced to choose between starvation and a $40 curry that really didn't live up to the price. chicken curry and rice it is. I couldn't even eat in the restaurant, so after a 30-minute walk back to our accommodation, I absolutely demolished the entire thing. Luckily, the other 2 Australians I was staying with also managed to make day 2. Justin with a score of 6-2-1 as well, and Jet who finished 7-2-0. That means that no one's coming home late after a big night out, and we were all extremely keen to get some good sleep before day 2. Yep, that should do nicely. The first round of day 2 has me up against a fan of the channel. Shout out to them for making it such a fun set. They're playing Snorlax, and with 3 Duskull in my deck, I find this matchup pretty Dragapult favored, as long as I don't prize Professor Turo's scenario or get seriously unlucky in some other way. I do open Pheasantipity EX, which isn't ideal, but I can just slap 3 energy on it and start attacking. A good thing to remember is that Handheld Fan won't remove your energy if you're only attacking benched Pokemon. I'm able to spread 100 damage shots everywhere with Cruel Arrow, and then eventually wipe an entire board of Snorlaxes by popping a couple Dusknoirs. Game 2 is really funny since I start with a Lumineon and Pheasantipity in hand. Under any other circumstances, I would have immediately Ultra Balled them away. However, my opponent opened up with Mantine, which had the Born Ashore attack to bench my discarded Pokemon. With that secret tech out of the bag, there's no way I'm going to discard my liabilities. I'll just have to hope that they don't play Erica's Invitation before I fill up my bench. Instead, they use box orders to find 2 accompanying flutes, trying to fish the liabilities out of my deck. Both of them whiff, and then they play another 2. Both of them whiff again. And with a few Silene heads and a Pokestop spin, they eventually play 3 more accompanying flutes. On the very last one, they do hit my Radiant Alakazam and just accept it as the best target they're going to find, even though it's not quite as good as something like Rotom V or Lumineon V. Later in the game, they drop a Xerosix Machinations. With my bench now full, I am more than happy to discard all those liabilities I was holding onto. We both have a pretty good laugh now that it's obvious why those first 6 flutes hit absolutely nothing. I'm able to close out the game and win my first set of the day. Next round, I hit a mirror match. Well, sort of. It was definitely Dragapult, but they didn't have any Dusknoirs in their deck. This freed up a lot of space for some pretty interesting techs, such as Lost City. We both set up pretty well in game 1, but they have both Pheasantipity and Lumineon in play. I check their discard and see that Professor Turo is already gone, so I'm confident that I can gust up Fez, put 200 damage on it, and set up for game on the following turn. And then they bench a second Lumineon, which searches out a second copy of Professor Turo's scenario. I probably should have expected something like this given the lack of Dusknoir, but in the moment it definitely blew my mind. Fortunately, I was still able to win this game. And although I didn't see it throughout the entire set, I'm pretty sure they had Unfair Stamp as their ace spec, which would explain their difficulty in setting up consistent Phantom Dives. In the second game, I was able to put massive pressure on their energy attachments thanks to Dusknoir and eventually take the set. In the penultimate round of Swiss, I pair a Lugia player. They must be pretty lucky to be running that deck all the way to an 8-2-1 record. And I got to sit next to Angus this round because he was also doing alright. Just look at those cute matching V-Star markers. In game 1, they open with Lugia V and then go Ultra Ball double chops, grabbing Iron Hands. This gives me the easy read they already have a Lugia V-Star in hand, but with no Iono on my side, there isn't anything I can do about it. So I just have to cop that turn 2 amp you very much. But my setup is actually really strong, and on my second turn, I've already got access to both of my rare candies. Now I'm only 1 piece away from taking a KO on both of their Archeops. I just need this Mezagoza to hit heads. And of course, it's a Tails. Then they have the boss to take another 2 prizes with Iron Hands and even manage to get 3 energy onto Regigigas, so when I can't find Temple of Sinnoh on my third turn, it's pretty much game. But then a judge interrupts us for a mid-round deck check. I've got nothing to worry about, but my opponent gets a warning for some pretty cooked sleeves on a couple of cards. Luckily, it's nothing more than that, because I don't want to win off of a game loss or a double prize penalty. In game 2, things actually go just about the same. I opt to go second, hoping to slow down their setup with Badoo, and they're able to get an immediate turn 2 attack with Iron Hands. I can't respond well enough and just lose the set 2-0. I was really hoping for that full 9-round win streak, but there just isn't much I can do about a Lugia who just has it like that. Time for the final round, and I absolutely wanted to win this one to close things out on a good note. I'm against another Lugia, and all I wanted is for them to not Ultra Ball double chops me on turn 1. They don't, and I'm able to set up a bit and get an itchy Pollen off on their active Iron Hands. Then they rip a Professor's Research, but without any Archeops in hand, things are looking pretty good. Their only way to discard one is to use Jet Energy on their Lugia V and then read the wind. I keep them locked with another turn of Itchy Pollen, and now they clearly have a tough decision. Either evolve into Lugia V-Star now now and accept playing the game with a single Archeops, or slow it down for another turn. They choose the second option and use Read the Wind once again to discard the second Archeops. And with only 10 damage on their Lugia V, they should be fine, right? I set up my Dragapult to attack, but then drop Radiant Alakazam to move 10 damage from their Iron Hand over to Lugia V. Exactly enough to knock it out. They didn't have access to Thornton, so that's the game. In game 2, I'm once again able to develop a strong board while keeping them item locked. But this time they do manage to eventually get down the double Archeops. However, by that point, I'm strong enough to completely spawn camp them with an immediate double knockout. Throwing in a Temple of Sinnoh on top of that seals the deal for an easy 2-0 to close out my tournament run. I end things off with 9 wins, 3 losses, and 1 tie, placing 112th out of over 3,350 competitors. It's not my best showing, but considering how things started off, I'm pretty happy with it, and I won't complain about getting a box of Surging Sparks. However, I'm still really hungry to top cut in internationals, so you can be sure I'll be at NAIC in June, and I hope to see a lot of you there as well. Thanks for watching the whole video. You should click the link on screen for more certified Tim Danklin content. Also like, subscribe, and comment, and shout out to all the channel members for that extra support.